It is Monday, June 2nd, and this is Irish Illustrated Insider. I'm Tim O'Malley, joined today by Tim Priester of Irish Illustrated and John Bryce of Football Scoop. And guys, we have some high school football coming up on the campus of Notre Dame actually this weekend. Irish Invasion, which I was able to go to it was proved invaluable in June of 2023. Priester, I believe you were there in 2024. We will
hmm
have our recruiting team there in 2025. That's this weekend, so we will actually save most of our conversation about Irish Invasion for this Thursday, and of course, a wrap up podcast next Monday. So I wanted to get back a little bit to our conversation with Marcus Freeman on Thursday. Priester, you wrote the most important article on that, sustaining success and making it back to the national championship. Was there anything else you thought we needed to touch on? Because I actually found something, and I can chime in with this later, from the first group on the record. We were the second group that I found intriguing.
Yeah, let me just comment on the sustainability story that I wrote. The headline kind of declared that this is now a sustainable
Yeah.
playoff program. It was pointed out to me by one of our questions today from Statman72, who I have been with many times on the West Coast of the Notre Dame Club of LA. And he said he thought that was a little bit premature. And I said, I get it if you're, to definitively state that Notre Dame has a program that's sustainable to push for the playoffs. But the reason I made it more of a declarative statement is because I think that's where Notre Dame is headed. Time will tell. Then he pointed out, 12 team playoff, 16 playoff, 16 team playoff. What does that mean exactly? But to put it succinctly, I think Notre Dame has a sustainable playoff program moving into this year. I think they'll prove that again this year. We'll see where the pieces fall, upon the conclusion of this year. A lot of changes can happen after the 2025 season, but that's my comment on the sustainability. I think it's real. I think it's going to continue this year.
Yeah, I think you make some excellent points there, TP. I also think it's important to note that we're talking about Notre Dame as a sustainable college football playoff contender, which I absolutely wholly agree with, especially as we look toward inevitable expansion. And also, I think another thing not to be discounted is, and people get sick of hearing me say, but finally, Notre Dame is positioned to have a multi-year starter at quarterback. That's one of the absolute keys to success in college football overall. Yes, Notre Dame has found success to varying degrees and finally to a playoff level this past season under Marcus Freeman with a transfer quarterback in Riley Leonard. But presumably, CJ Carr or Kenny Minchey is going to take over this thing and have the ability to guide Notre Dame's offense for multiple years. Mike Denbrock has been handsomely rewarded as one of the highest paid offensive coordinators in all of college football. So, there's stability therein. And I just think that because of that and because of what Notre Dame has done, as we discussed the other day, 45 through 85, as it is right now, is really, really admirable. It's certainly very favorable, I think, to what Notre Dame has been able to do and is positioned to do moving forward this year. And then just two other quick things that struck me from our time with Marcus on Thursday. We might not have talked enough about how much they like Flanagan and think he's going to help immediately.
James, yeah.
Yes, as a true freshman. Yeah, James Flanagan as a true freshman at that tight end position. We probably didn't spend enough time on that. We probably didn't give Marcus Freeman enough credit for his comparison to Jeremiah Love as Gumby. I like that. There might have been a little word salad in the way, but Gumby was a good one. Or maybe not even maybe a different type of food.
It was a word soup in the way.
Yeah, it was a word
salad.
soup. So not gum. No, yeah, exactly. And then the last thing I would say is I thought it was another good question to ask them about using different people on the road, analysts and GAs, and that's something that we had already touched on this podcast that they had kept the coordinators Biagi, Denbrock, and Ash all in during this cycle to deploy more of an NFL model. And while that's true, he also said, hey, a guy like Myron, who is so good, why would we not have him out on the recruiting trail? And I think that's something we're going to hear a lot more about specific to MTA in the coming days and weeks.
Yeah. Tim, if I could jump back in here,
Yeah.
I want to give credit. The sustainability concept for the story, that was a Pete Sampson question. He used the durability of the program. I turned it into sustainability, but I think Pete Sampson, when it comes to big picture questions, I don't think there's anybody in the local media that does a better job of asking them. So thanks to Pete Sampson for the topic, because Freeman gave a great answer, and Pete was the one that initiated it.
From the other group, and the others, if you're a Lost fan, no, there was a group that went before us actually, and it was Blue and Gold, Indie Insider, South Bend Tribune, Irish Breakdown, and Inside ND Sports, and one of them was kind enough to send me the on the record transcript, so I returned that in kind. I found something interesting. Marcus gave a better answer to their Botello Traore question, Tim Priester, because you opened with that. They asked the same question, and he mentioned, as an aside, Marcus Freeman, we are playing left and right end now, kind of getting away from the true Viper, where the Viper is the pass rusher or the boundary drop. So left and right end. Kind of asked why. Well, why would you make that change? He felt they have more interchangeable guys. He said 4 interchangeable guys that they can play there. They might have 5, and then he even did mention, kind of as an aside, Logan Thomas is coming on as a 6. So I find it interesting for roster mavens, and that's what we have a lot of people at Irish Illustrated, at least if not on Insider, on the message board. Left and right end. So you'll see Bryce Young playing to the boundary. You can see Boubacar Traore or Jordan Botello coming off that field side. And if people don't know the boundary field side thing, very easily, the boundary is one close hash mark and the field is the far hash mark. So you'll see a little bit different stuff from Chris Ash there and Al Washington.
I think that's interesting, because I've always thought Junior Tuihalamaka really, I mean, is more of a strong side
Yep.
guy, and he's been playing the Viper end. I mean, I don't, and Burnham has had to play both because of injuries, so I guess it makes sense. That's probably a Chris Ash thing. The Viper was a
I think it
Mike
was Al.
Elston. No, it was Mike Elston.
It was Mike Elston, yeah,
Yeah,
because
it
it
was
went
under
from
Mike Elston.
Drop sounds terrible because it is not a good recruiting tool. Mike Elston told us that.
Yeah.
You're going to be the drop end. No, 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 no.
Ah.
Then it became like the
I
shark.
mean, I'm going to run away from the quarterback.
Yes, exactly. So it's had a lot of names. It used to be boundary, but it's interesting. And I misspoke a little bit. He said we have 4 guys with a lot of experience there. Traore would not be a guy with a lot of experience, but they have more than 4 guys. And he just said, look, you're in. They're going fast. You got somebody else to run into the game. You go. It doesn't matter what side you're on. You're a left and right end right now. I think that's good for playing teams with up-tempo offenses as well. I don't know if that's really all part of it, but that's an interesting way of going about it.
I don't know that Logan Thomas is. I mean, I think Logan Thomas is
At
pretty
that
much
level.
a pure Viper. And by the way, I don't think it was Elston who coined it. I think he asked his players,
Yes.
and I think one of the players came up with that. I don't know who chose to spell it Vyper, but
Yeah, exactly.
I like it. I've always liked it.
Viper does. It's just a lot better than drop. That's for sure. Drop recruiting the pass rusher to play drop end was never going to work well for us, I don't think. Friend of the show, Tim Murray, collected Notre Dame's live point spreads over the weekend, and they are the games of the year. If you were to ask for 5 games of the year, these would be the 5 games of the year. I found them interesting, and we can go over Notre Dame's success against the spread here soon. But official spreads by DraftKings: at Miami, Notre Dame is favored by 2.5. Against A&M, Notre Dame is favored by 7. At Arkansas, 12.5. Hosting Boise State, 15.5. And USC, 13.5. I would expect maybe the likes of NC State to pop out here soon, and you usually got to wait a while for like Navy and those other games to come out.
Mm-hmm. JB, which ones interest you the most?
I am Arkansas 12.5 is intriguing to me. I expect that to be a late night game, and for the Hogs to be called and for it to be a pretty raucous atmosphere. And Arkansas was really, really active in the portal, but they also bring back some key pieces. I think maybe they really bring back a lot on defense. I need to double check that. But I was talking with somebody from Arkansas last month at the DFO meetings in Dallas, and they were just driving home the point that every year they've gotten better under this defensive regime, and they were able to hold on to their defensive coordinator who almost got pulled away, I think, for Ohio State during this cycle. So they were glad about that. And then USC at home, 13.5. Or I know it's early, but that seems like a big number to me.
I agree with both of those. I 12, and I like you, I expect those to drop come game time, although Notre Dame's been winning pretty handily in Notre Dame Stadium against
Right,
USC.
exactly.
I understand
That's
that,
how I
but
felt about that one.
yeah, I understand that. For now, I mean, I guess you can bet on it now, but Arkansas 12.5 at night, and that will be at night. We know that. And they brought in, I want to say 28 transfers. Yeah, that's a little bit challenging. I mean, -2.5 at Miami is
I feel like we
interesting.
somehow knew that one. That's like the one we knew a long time ago, but I don't know why. Someone must have taken a shot and been pretty accurate when they took that shot in the industry. Maybe it
Yeah,
was Tim Murray. It could have been Tim Murray telling us back down in down at the
yeah.
semifinal or championship game.
What are your thoughts on these, Tim?
So I did a quick rundown for musings, not to run that over, but I would take, if forced to pick all of them, I wouldn't pick the A&M game right now. That has push written all over it, actually. So I would take Notre Dame against Miami, and then if forced to, I would just take them against A&M. I would take Arkansas, and I would take Boise, and I would take Notre Dame against USC because Notre Dame has tends to absolutely obliterate USC when they get on them at home, and that crowd will not stop this
No,
year.
they won't. Boise's interesting. I'm very interested. I'm about to start the first rate series for better or for worse. It takes a lot of time through the summer, but um
Yeah,
I mean I want
that's a
to
chore. You
yeah,
need
it
Phil
is.
Steele to help out a little bit on that one
Yeah. Well, he'll come into play
later
whenever the
on.
magazine comes out, but
Yeah,
which is I think actually I need to get the early version of it
yeah, you
before
can
the
get
print
there.
version. Yeah, boy, I really want to take a deeper dive here this summer into Boise because they did lose a lot and they weren't able to, or whether it was by choice or not, I don't know, but they didn't supplement very much in the transfer portal. So I'm looking forward to getting further into that team and see how legit that 15.5 is right now.
I would quickly say, O'Malley, you think A&M's a push? I would feel pretty comfortable betting Notre Dame to cover at home versus A&M. As we know, a night game, Notre Dame will have 2 weeks to prepare for that game, 13 days,
Yep,
whatever,
yep.
regardless of the Miami outcome, good or bad. And I just think it's going to be one of those electric atmospheres. You guys have much better perspective on it than I do in terms of how often or infrequent that SEC or those type programs come to Notre Dame Stadium for a night game. So I like Notre Dame a lot in that one. I also first blush is absolutely I would have Notre Dame covering against Boise State. I just think there's a tremendous drop off there.
Yeah,
My
there
Boise
probably
State
is.
thing is you don't cover every game,
You
and
don't.
that is the game that's in between other difficult games. It's
Yeah.
less with Boise State's lines and less with what Boise State lost in Genty and what they have returning at quarterback as Notre Dame is 23-6 under Marcus Freeman against the spread. It's incredible because Brian Kelly was always a 500 coach against the spread. 23-6. They lost 4 of the 6 games they didn't cover, so people can figure those out. Clemson, Louisville, Ohio State, and Northern Illinois. The other two they didn't
They just
cover
missed
were
covering that.
yes, just 20.
It was
Yes,
only
it's
28
like
and
38 points away. 30 points away.
I have a little bit of I mean
I
I
feel like
respect
someone's gonna bite them, not win, but
yeah, I
I hope.
respect Mike Elko's second year in the program.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
I mean, just I'm not saying Notre Dame's going to lose any of those games
I
per
would put a
se.
lot more money on Notre Dame covering USC than A&M, and by that I mean you can't name an amount different than I would
Yeah.
put on
Now I
covering the
think
USC game.
I think the atmosphere for Sunday night in Miami is, and I've heard from enough
Yeah.
members of Irish Illustrated and Boyd Posters to feel like I can drop this term again, but it's going to be Crazy Town Banana Land. And I can't recall if I've shared this yet on the podcast. So I've been saving it, intending to share it, but it was just brought to my attention from some Miami personnel within the last few weeks that to this day they still have a graphic in their football facility from Notre Dame's last trip down there in 2017. And it's something their players walk by every single day. They're going to be walking by that every single day all summer leading up into it. That doesn't do anything on the field. I'm just telling you the perception for Miami playing Notre Dame and then as infrequently as they play, it's still a special rivalry. And so there's a lot of magnitude with it, but I did want to bust that little nugget out and share it here that graphic is still hanging to this day in the Miami football complex.
It might not do anything on the field this time, but it did everything on the field last time.
Yeah.
Notre Dame,
Yeah,
Notre
no,
Dame
a different Notre Dame
wilted. They're
program
enough
right now,
different
no
Notre Dame
doubt.
football program and team and coach and everything. That's an all-time wilt because did you see Mark Richt in that interview with Drew Mentok mention if they don't drop that opening touchdown or they don't miss not drop if they don't miss that opening touchdown, I don't think the game goes like that. I have
Wow.
never thought that, but when the opposing head coach says it, I guess I was wrong.
Yeah.
I just thought that Notre Dame played poorly, but they
Mhm.
broke This team wouldn't break like that.
Yeah, for some reason I missed that game, but I do remember 1989
It was 1,000 times worse.
when
89 was
Notre
a
Dame
1,000
had
times worse.
a 23 game winning streak, and I just have there's nothing to maybe in 2017. I mean,
No, it wasn't. It was not comparable.
okay, all right, but 1989 was the most vile place I've ever been in my life.
People felt all Notre Dame fans all felt unsafe because you know why? They were unsafe.
They were
It was an
unsafe.
actual. There were bottles of urine being thrown at people. It was the worst place you could go. Their hatred for Notre Dame then, after 88, I mean, that's why it stopped 88, 89, and 90. It was
Yeah.
quelled. They don't like each other, Notre Dame and Miami, but that Notre Dame team was number 3, newly minted number 3 and rolling, and Miami was undefeated. That was the only game all year Miami had that crowd. But it's still nothing compared to the old rivalry they had. Before we wrap up segment 1, I would be remiss if I didn't have John Bryce jump in with a hoops tidbit we've been waiting to save. But boy, we could not do that on the not waiting to save, trying to use, but had to save it. We could not have done that on the Marcus Freeman Thursday podcast last week.
Yeah, so we've noted that Notre Dame has hired a new strength coach, Sanderson from Vanderbilt, and of course his son has since transferred to La Lumiere, and that's he's the Sanderson kid. Jonathan Sanderson has been a target. My people in Nashville have told me they've seen Micah at some of his games during the allowable periods, obviously over the last couple of years. So getting Sanderson into the program at Notre Dame as the strength coach is not something that happened overnight. It's been months in the working as those two have gotten to know each other better, and Notre Dame has continued its recruitment of his son, Jonathan Sanderson. What was brought to my attention by folks in Nashville is that also just transferring from Nashville, I believe they were at the Ensworth School there, to La Lu is I'm going to butcher this name. Just bear with me. Gon Erdane Salongo. He's the 7'1" big man who also just transferred with the Sanderson kid to La Lu. Okay, that's fine. They were high school teammates. They've transferred together to La Lu. Well, here's the other thing. The Sanderson family has adopted the Salongo kid, the 7'1" big time prospect, who's obviously a big time prospect physically and figuratively. So just continue to watch that. Obviously, Notre Dame is well aware of that, but I did want to bring it to everyone's attention that the Sanderson family has unofficially adopted the Salongo kid, who's also left his Nashville school to go to La Lu and is a 7'1" big man.
You had me at 7'1", JB.
Thank you.
Looking to upgrade your wardrobe? Founded by Notre Dame alum Go Wang, you've seen ESQ's custom clothing on the player walk and all of your favorite players and coaches. With more than a decade of making the best bespoke clothing available, ESQ will help you look and feel your best. From a perfect fitting suit or sport coat, shirt, or bomber jacket, or that perfect tuxedo for wedding season, check out esqclothing.com and book an appointment to upgrade your wardrobe today. Mention Irish Illustrated and get 10% off your entire purchase. That's esqclothing.com. We'll be back with segment 2, Burning Up the Boards.
Segment 2 of Irish Illustrated Insider is called Burning Up the Boards, and we start with a question from System Man 167151. If you were Notre Dame's general manager for this year's current roster, who would be your top 5 highest paid players? List them from highest to lowest. And System Man 167151 offers his list. And here's his order. Number 1, Jeremiah Love. Number 2, Charles Jagusaw. Number 3, Leonard Moore. Number 4, CJ Carr. Number 5, Bryce Young.
Well, there's oof. You want to go, JB? I have one missing from that list.
Sure.
Is Jeremiah Love like universally?
Yeah,
Number
Jeremiah
one?
Love's
Okay.
got to be.
Yeah.
I would have probably Leonard Moore as my number 2. I would probably have. I might have Emil Wagner paid a little bit more than Charles Jagasaw. Not by much, or I would have them pretty equal. But just because Emil Wagner played every single game last year and now has that much more experience going into this year, I would probably have Adon Schuler in my top 5, and then I would have CJ Carr or your starting quarterback. You can just if you can say Carr or starting quarterback, either one for me. But that would be it for me. Like Love, I think, is a unanimous number 1, but I'm having Leonard Moore too, and I'm having Schuler in there, and I'm having Wagner in there, and I'm having my quarterback in there.
I'm in favor of changing starting quarterbacks every year. No, I'm just kidding, JB. But I would.
I don't ever talk about it.
I would.
I'll never tell.
I would work in Kingston as a sophomore. Love's a 1 year guy, but you still got to pay it. Comes off the books. That's great. Leonard Moore and Kingston and Bryce Young are 2 year investments, maybe three. Somebody could be three out of that. Schuler's a 1 year investment. Carr, probably. Carr is a multi-year investment. You got to pay Carr. I mean, here's the deal. You lose Carr if like there's 10 guys paid more than him in the current NIL era, or if they're dividing the money by half at quarterback. I have to have Kingston Viliamuasa on my list. So I would just hope that my offensive linemen accept their Mission Barbecue NIL deals and we move on from there.
This is a great question, and
It
man,
is.
would I love to know what the real order is. I mean,
I think Don's pretty high. I know that.
that would be absolutely fascinating. After Jeremiah Love, I wonder, I mean, guys that have established themselves, don't you have to pay them more, or you got to pay the younger guys
I gotta pay
that are
them.
going to be stars more because you don't want them taken away from you? I wouldn't put Bryce Young up there because he's Bryant Young's son, and I think that they could probably get away with
Wow.
not having
I
to
like
pay
that
him
line of thinking.
not having to pay him top dollar. I don't think, if he's like eighth on the list, I think BY will be okay with
That's
that.
good. That's high level.
BY's done pretty well during his career. I think I'd have Joggis a second and Leonard Moore third. I want to give a shout out to JB because he bit his tongue last week when I said Don Schuler had a great
Oh,
year.
come
Who would have
on.
thought? Who would have thought that? And it was JB. I had forgotten that, and that was a great call. I was unsure going into the season, but man, he really lived up to it. But KVA, Tim, I've got to agree with that. But again, I'm not sure what order you go. Do you give it to the older guy or the younger guy? I would love to know what that list is. CJ Carr obviously has to be on there. Beyond them, I don't how to like you getting Malachi Fields. I'm sure there were people that I'm sure there were opponents programs that were willing to outbid for Malachi
Yeah.
Fields.
Greathouse had to make some money after his final two
Yeah,
games of the
Great
season.
House too. It's a great question. I would absolutely love that list.
Yeah. Nice. I thought they were going to see that one actually, but
No,
next question. This should be quick, but I wanted to include it because I think we might be asked a lot, and hopefully we can just bookmark this for everyone. MG Perez, 0718. Your thoughts on how long it may take the coaching staff to settle on a starting quarterback in August? And he wonders, do you think they may wait until the week before the game?
I do not think that they will wait until a week before the game. So I think you're probably looking at 7 to 10 days and then they'll pare it down. That's my opinion. But I don't see any scenario where they wait until it's a week out.
I don't either. And I wrote down 7 to 10 days, and I know TO is of the same mindset within the first week or so. I think that will be decided. I think it's going to be CJ Carr. I have a tremendous respect for what Kenny Minchie did in the spring, but
Yep.
the fact that these are the two quarterbacks and that Steve Angeli understood that he didn't win the starting job. I don't see how it is anybody other than CJ Carr, but that's because we're in the media and I can say those things, and I understand why Marcus Freeman and Notre Dame would not want to give any tips or hints to that.
You need to get him, the quarterback, all the reps possible for Miami and Texas A&M. It'll be 7 to 10 days. If it's not, it's something went really badly. It's not because something went great and they were both so awesome, because then you just name one and then not tell us you're playing them both. But it'll be one quarterback, and I think it'll be very quickly. We have a former friend of the show here, JJ Post, who is speaking out against the show, it seems like. All right, dude. This is the first June podcast of the year, so it feels like a perfect time to roll out this query. You're told that only one of these phrases is allowed to be used on Irish Illustrated Insider for the rest of time. Quote, bad radio, or quote, Joe Burrow threw 60 touchdowns. Which reference gets the axe? And yes, I asked this question when Pete Sampson was not on the podcast on purpose.
Well, fortunately for me, I've never committed such bad radio as to make any reference of Joe Burrow's 60 touchdown passes. So I've got zero problems eschewing both phrases and welcome any and all questions from former friend of the show, JJ Post.
I
Next.
think
No.
I think O'Malley and Sampson have cornered the market on Joe Burrow through 60 touchdown passes.
Because it was 60, by the way. That's what
It
I want
was,
to point
yeah,
out.
64 per, and I always say 4 per game, 15 games, 4 times 15, 60. I think that one's pretty overused. I don't think bad radio. you say bad radio every now and then, but
Every once in a while.
JJ
I said it last
Post,
week. I said it
you
last
do
week.
100 podcasts a year and tell me how often you repeat yourself or don't.
Can we stop talking about transfer quarterbacks versus in-house quarterbacks too, JB? Is that something that maybe we could pop off this? The JJ Post didn't include that out of courtesy, I guess. There's
I don't ever talk about that, so no problem.
right.
We're with you here, JJ.
Next question from Ford Pass Chem. This one requires a good memory and some intellectual honesty. How do your expectations for CJ Carr's career compare to other buzzy but untested quarterbacks of yesteryear? Golson, Zaire, Wimbush, Jerkovic, and Buckner going into their second season with the program. And this is a very well written question because he did not include Kaiser, who we had no expectations for going to his second with the program. I could throw Book in there though too.
Yeah, I don't understand the intellectual honesty. You ask a question and answer it. But I was very high
Oh,
on Golson.
maybe no. Oh, we know this guy wasn't as good as we thought he was
Yeah,
going to be.
no,
No,
no hindsight. Don't let
Don't
hindsight
let
color your
hindsight get
answer.
you.
no, we won't. I'm just kidding. I expected great things out of Golson.
Hmm.
I never thought Malik Zaire would be a starter at Notre Dame because I didn't think he was accurate enough. Sorry, Malik. I expected a lot more out of Brandon Wimbush. I didn't expect him to lose the job to Ian Book after 3 games, that's for sure. Jacobic, I was high on until we saw him practice, and then everything fell apart. And I also was very concerned about Buckner changing his throwing motion on his way into Notre Dame. And I just, like Zaire, I was uncertain about his accuracy, and that proved true.
I don't have the depth of knowledge of you guys. I will say I'm incredibly bullish on CJ Carr. I think I've made that pretty clear. I will, however, say from afar, I had pretty high expectations for Notre Dame for Wimbush and Jurkovec because I was familiar with both because of the programs elsewhere that had recruited them, and specifically Wimbush had been alongside Jarrett Garantano and quite a bit of stuff when Tennessee was recruiting Garantano, and I knew Garantano and his family pretty well, and so I'd seen enough of those other guys to know, okay, I felt like Notre Dame was getting a couple of pretty good guys that would be solid program quarterbacks for Notre Dame that you thought would last a while. But I'm old enough to have remembered back when Notre Dame got Andrew Hendricks and Tommy Rees at the same time, and Tennessee had been recruiting both of those guys. And so I had a lot of expectations for Buckner because of what people in the program had told me at that time, and how excited they were and how much effort Tommy Rees had put specifically into recruiting Tyler Buckner and felt that he could be a program changer type of quarterback that could elevate them to a new level. So because of that, I had very high expectations for him. Once I got around him and saw him practicing more and all the mechanical motions and him not getting his senior year of high school, I dampened those down. But I can say with all intellectual honesty that I'm incredibly bullish on CJ Carr and his future.
Okay, I can actually go back to the summer of their second years for all these guys. I put some thought into this.
Okay.
Summer of their second year, I would be highest on one Golson/Carr. I don't know how to separate those two from that one. Two Wimbush, three Zaire, four Buckner, and five Jerkovic. Only Tim because summer after his second year was after that blue gold game where he looked
Okay.
broken and defeated. Like he did not look like.
Oh
he
yeah,
was
I mean,
anymore.
maybe I didn't
Yeah.
read it right. I was thinking in terms of when they came in.
So Golson was be my comparison for what I think CJ Carr. I think he'll have a better career than all these players. Well, he has to have a better career than everybody on this list because Golson died on the vine. I would love for CJ Carr to do what Golson did in his first season, though.
Yeah, I don't like with Carr. I don't like. I'm not concerned about accuracy. I think there will
Right.
be way more bad reads that lead to turnovers in the first year, and that's just because his eyes have never seen it. He's never experienced the pace of the play and the ways that defenses are going to try to confuse him. As far as accuracy,
Only Golson on this list is anything.
oh yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
and I think I would still say that I think my expectations for accuracy would lean towards Carr slightly over Golson at that time.
I like Zaire's competitiveness going into his second year because he had become the Music City Bowl MVP by running the ball, on that bad year. But I remember also thinking it's telling that Golson bailed him out on every third down coming into pass. Remember that usage? It's the only proper usage I think I've seen. The Brian Kelly 2 QB thing, he expertly handled Zaire and Golson that day.
that day.
Yeah, that no, that yeah,
That
it was got a lot worse. It got a lot worse as everything
that
went along
day.
the line there.
Well, how would you rank them coming out of high school, coming into Notre Dame?
I like Zaire more in college than high school. So number coming into Notre Dame would be Golson, Wimbush. No, Golson, Jerkovic, Wimbush, Buckner, and Zaire. But I had Zaire ahead of Buckner pretty quickly when I saw them play because when Zaire came into play, he just came in and balled out to
Yeah.
start out. You know, I mean he got worse when he got injured. It affected him because his athleticism was his best trait. I truly believe that injury really hurt him.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it was a bad injury.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a long recovery. Question from ND106. With good news on the injury front for multiple key defensive players, what should our defensive expectations be against Miami and Texas A&M? And what will you be looking for from the defense during summer and fall camp?
I mean, for the defense in summer, it's just them continuing to get bigger, faster, stronger, and acclimate to the nuances of Chris Ash's defense. This is the time that Notre Dame has just reported to campus over the weekend, kicking off summer workouts this week. I think they're dividing into 8 teams for those workouts with captains for each, and then they'll kind of go from there. I will drop one other little nugget here that I found out earlier today. Apparently, Jason Onye is one of the captains for one of the workout teams this
Oh,
summer.
that's
So
outstanding to hear.
That's great.
as we talk about the
Good for him.
the completed or the ongoing recovery for Jason Onye to be a significant factor in this program, that's certainly telling. But for me, it's those elements. And then specifically, what do I look for Notre Dame at Miami? I look for Notre Dame to get after Carson Beck's ass as quickly as possible and as early as possible, and to hit him as often as possible. And I think that I'm not saying anything that anybody who watches the game wouldn't be saying. It will be the first time he's been hit since he hurt his elbow against Texas in the SEC championship game. And I think that's significant. And you don't want that guy to get confidence. You want him doubting himself as he comes back from injury.
I'll take it from looking into camp. I think I want to see so specifically like what I want to watch to confirm how I believe they'll be a very good defense is I want to watch Onye and Hughes. I want to see if they really have 5 because I know Heinisch is a good reserve, but I'd like to see him not have to be the number 3 lineman inside. It'd be great if he's 4.5, because we know he's a playmaker. I just think he can hold up better if you have a little more size in there over the course of the year. I want to see KVA and Bowen next to each other a little bit in camp because that's imposing right there, and they don't sacrifice much. Bowen was so much better against the pass than I thought he was going to be last year. I could just assume he'll continue a little bit of an ascent there, and we got to quit bringing the guy up on every podcast. Pretty sure it's my fault this time, but I want to see Carson Hobbs showing that he is the reserve nickel and first corner off the bench because I just think he's a very good player. First corner off the bench last year was Leonard Moore, for crying out loud. Like you need these guys a lot more than you just need only your starters. So he's kind of the personnel player I want to see.
Well, and second time through for him, so he should be that much better. But I like what JB said about just understanding Ash's system. We're not going to see anything in the summer, and we're going to have one. You guys saw the schedule? We're going to have one full.
Yep. It's not official though. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So my apologies there. It's just I want to, like, Chris Ash came in and said all the right things about picking up where they left off and just enhancing and it's Notre Dame's defense, not my defense. But I realize he hasn't been a defensive coordinator for a while, but still, he's a successful defensive coordinator from the past, and he's going to put his own mark on it. So whatever that mark is, I'm not judging it, right or wrong, but just to know that, because by the end of the third year with Al Golden, those guys,
oh god,
they had telepathy going with Al Golden from the sideline to the field. Who was it that said we've mentioned that a lot of times they didn't have to speak; you just gave a look to each other and they understood what to do.
There was one guarantee for the A&M game last year. It was going under. That defense,
Yeah.
I don't know the Miami game will go under. Miami could end up scoring on Notre Dame, and Notre Dame could end up scoring on Miami. Notre Dame's defense was the surest thing and the surest of sure bets in week one, which is not a sure week in college football, going into that game. That you cannot say that about this. I mean, you could feel good about them, you could feel great about them. It was over that Notre Dame wasn't going to be giving up points against A&M. We kept getting texts all year from like, well, Carter Carroll's covering A&M now, used to cover Notre Dame. We mentioned Tim Murray, all these people associated with the show. They're like, you're taking the under, right? I took the under in April, man.
Yeah.
There is no doubt that is not as easy this time.
And
So
like, I don't know. I'm just, I hate to be a spoil sport here, but I just don't know. I've got to spend the summer looking at
yeah,
Miami and Texas A&M to know exactly what Notre Dame's going to be facing that day. Miami has a bunch of new players, a bunch of new established transfer portal 4-star guys as listed in the transfer portal inserted into the equation. So let me just go through a lot of film study here through the summer before I start judging them.
from CMU Pens fan, which 24 contributor do you see making the biggest leap in 2025? Faison, Christian Gray, or Jaden Osbury?
JB.
I think all three will have very significant, serious roles for Notre Dame this year. I think it's Christian Gray. I think with the continued emergence of Leonard Moore and the fact that Gray got picked on down the stretch last season, teams will open this season trying to pick on him. And I like Christian Gray. I like his mental makeup. His physical makeup is pretty obvious. I think he has a very strong bounce back year.
I didn't pick Christian Gray because I don't think it's about I don't look at it as a bounce back
I had
season for
Gray
him.
rated
I
too
look at two
highly to,
games.
yeah, yeah.
I look at two games. Well, I mean, the end of the Ohio State game and certainly the issues that he had against USC, but I thought he had a really good year. I mean, he was part of the great Notre Dame pass coverage defense, and Leonard Moore, got a lot of the publicity and headlines from that. But I thought Christian Gray was good, pretty much all along. I think I would pick Osbury. I think I don't know. Tim, you said you want to see Bowen and KVA out there a lot together in August. I think those are the starting two. I don't know how much more time Osbury gets, but I think Osbury will probably grow into his body a little bit further than he was last year. And I just saw Jordan Faison play lacrosse this spring, and he's still not strong enough. So, I mean, I think he can have a good year. I agree with you, JB. I think all three are in a position to have a good year, but we need to see a stronger version of Jordan Faison in both sports. Otherwise, he won't maximize his abilities.
Yeah, and for me, when I answer this question about making the leap in 25, part of my logic for my answer is the fact that we know Christian Gray is going to start. We don't know that either of those other guys
Yeah.
will start beyond special teams.
All right, I've cheated in my answer while you guys were talking. I looked it up.
Naturally.
I looked it up really fast. I naturally cheated. Christian Gray last year, Irish Illustrated postseason rankings. So this is around January 25th. The four of us voted, the three of us here, and Drew Mentok. Christian Gray placed 12th on the team, which is pretty damn good. Top 50 players. He was number 12. Jaden Osbury was 17th, and Jordan Faison, people always forget, missed a bunch of time, was 26th. So if you want to look at it this way, I'll take Faison to improve most because he was 26. And it's hard for Christian Gray. Christian Gray would have to get into, which he definitely could, top 7 range. But yeah, if you're going to cheat, like I like to do in these things, Faison has the most room.
I don't think that's cheating. I just think that's good research. That's well done. Fair enough. Question from Kay Beasley. With the SEC releasing their strength of record and making a stink about their schedule, is there some truth that easier scheduling, such as Indiana, SMU, Penn State did last year, might actually be a better model to follow than scheduling heavyweight home and aways if it expands to a 14 or 16 team model?
Well, I think some of this is yet to be determined because, and we've alluded to this, like the thing about the SEC is their coaches, by and large, do not want to go to a ninth game. And I did radio for Columbia, South Carolina this past week, and they pointed out, John, we meaning South Carolina, has 8 SEC games this year, plus opens with Virginia Tech and has its rivalry game with Clemson. That's 10
Ooh.
power conference games. they're not going to play. They point blank said they will not play 11 power conference games if they go to a 9 game schedule. So that's why I'm just extrapolating this over to Notre Dame. That's why if the SEC votes to go to 9 games, I think that's good for a bunch of different reasons. But I do think that ties into making Notre Dame's future scheduling that much more difficult. I don't think that Notre Dame is wired to schedule a bunch of cupcakes. I don't think that Notre Dame wants to. I don't think Marcus Freeman wants to. We just got through asking Marcus Freeman. I asked the question about continuing the USC rivalry. He said we'll play them basically any place, anywhere, any time of the year. And so I think that answer to me encapsulates Notre Dame's scheduling philosophy.
I agree. I have two answers here, unfortunately. I agree with John and I agree with Notre Dame. And growing up, I love hard schedules. I'm the guy that liked playing Michigan in week 2 for crying out loud the entire time I was growing up,
Right.
even though it costs you every other year. I always want USC on the schedule. I love home and homes when you have Alabama, Ohio State, all those teams is what make Tennessee makes college football great. And yes, if you schedule like Indiana, SMU, and Penn State, you will get in the playoff if you're Notre Dame in the expanded format. You just will. Notre Dame's schedule trended down last year. They got in.
Yeah, you would for sure. You're
There's
right.
two different answers. I hate it. None of Penn State's schedule. Look at Penn State in September.
Yeah.
Nobody's going
What?
to care. They're just going to be 3-0 and ranked number 3.
That's
It's
right.
sad,
They're gonna
but it's
they'll
not.
care they'll be criticized as it's happening,
Yeah, but
but
big
in
deal.
October and November, nobody's
Yeah.
going to care.
No
It's
one's
going
going
to
to
be the
care.
straight
Yeah.
number of wins and losses.
So it's two
Yeah,
different
and
answers for
and
me.
again,
Love it and hate it. Yeah.
they're going to be 3-0 or whatever, but then they're going to have 9 Big Ten conference games
Yeah.
Yeah.
to
7 of
make
them
up for it.
stink.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
To make up for it, Notre Dame does not have that
Right.
luxury. I would say you're right that like Notre Dame at 11-1 with an overall trash schedule and maybe 3 quality opponents that they go 2-1 against, they're going to get in. But in this new iteration, now that Notre Dame can earn a bye, I would argue there's greater incentive to schedule
Yeah.
greater because you can earn that bye and have that easier or condensed path to the national championship game.
Yeah, Jack Swarbrick was frequently Swarbrick was criticized about everything by a lot of people, but he was criticized for the difficulty of their schedule. I think Pete Bavacco will similarly be criticized, but by those that are inclined to do that. They just created a series with Clemson, even though they already had a deal with the ACC and were going to play them 4 times over the next however many years. I just, and as you said, JB, Marcus Freeman mentioned it the other day. If you're going to remain independent, you have to schedule difficult. And it's easier for Marcus Freeman to say about USC any place, anytime, anywhere, or whatever it was, because they're independent, and it's easier to say that he doesn't have to worry about the rigors of a conference schedule per se, even though they play a handful of ACC teams. But I'm sure that Kay Beasley asked this question as it relates to Notre Dame and the reasoning behind scheduling something more difficult, but whatever, Notre Dame's going to do it. That's I mean, I think that's kind of always been their philosophy. I've been criticized in years past because I mean most of our listeners weren't around during the Ara Parseghian era, and he was great. He was amazing. But the combined records of his opponents during his 11-year run at Notre Dame was about 500. They played a lot of bad teams then, and he beat up on most of those bad teams, struggled with USC most of the time, um, were upset or defeated by a very good Purdue team at that time a few times along the way. So anyway, long story short, this is the way it is. Notre Dame's not going to change it. We have a question from the Linebacker Lounge. We have 2 questions, actually. I'll read the first one that's tied in with this. The Linebacker Lounge asks, given all the recent noise about the USC rivalry being on thin ice, hypothetical question. Notre Dame has to start fresh and schedule 4 brand new rivalries starting next year, throwing history and tradition out the window. Who would you schedule and why?
I would not throw history or tradition out the window, so I am going to schedule the teams I want to go cover, or let's even pretend I didn't even have this job where I would want to go watch Notre Dame play. Tennessee is always my favorite trip.
Ooh,
I'm not pandering to John Bryce. That is true. They're
it's a
easily my
great,
favorite trip.
it's an awesome
It's awesome.
stadium to go to.
For my friends listening, this is not the pleasure cruise you were looking for, though crazy woman that's told us that at the restaurant outside of Knoxville. I will never forget that. I want to go to Oregon, Outson Stadium, so give me a home and home with Oregon. I'm making a really hard schedule here, by the way. That's okay. You don't need to go to the playoffs every year. Let's say
You are
let's
if you're
do
going to have sustainability in your program.
This is not for sustainability. This is for my personal enjoyment. Texas is a great one to go to. I love having the burnt orange of Texas up in Notre Dame Stadium, 55-24, 38-0, or was it 38-3? Those were fun games and great games down there. Also at Darrell Royal. And it would not be Ohio State. It would not be Alabama, though I liked going to Alabama for a different game. My fourth, 0% is Penn State. I can tell you that much. I don't want to go that hellhole. Colorado.
Interesting. That's
All
strictly
based on my trips. Yeah, how I want to enjoy
that's
it.
strictly aesthetics and headlines that makes you want Colorado. Okay, I'll dive in here. You took one of mine. I've actually gotten to cover a game in Autzen Stadium. It's pretty cool. Riding, seeing the Duck ride the Harley onto the field and seeing their facilities and as different culturally as that area of the country is, it is great college football wise. It's very disparate when you look at those two things side by side. You know what? If you lose the USC series, and I'm Notre Dame, I'm handing USC a de facto foam finger with the middle one raised, and I'm scheduling a series with UCLA.
UCLA, yeah.
So I've got UCLA, I've got Oregon. Damn you, O'Malley. I'm going LSU. Absolutely.
That's a great call.
For plots and subplots, I'm going LSU, and that's number one over UCLA, just because LSU football is in a healthier place right now than UCLA. But those are my first three, and despite you, O'Malley, I'm going Penn State. I know I have no desire. Trust me, all my friends in Columbus are like, you better hope you never have to cover a game in that hellhole. It takes forever to get in and out of. But I'm going Penn State because I remember Penn State Notre Dame games from my kid days. And there's still two powerful brands. And now we know how much more that rivalry would be spiced right here and now, and not just because of things that happen on the field in the Orange Bowl. And
Why is that? Why is that, JB? Why do you feel
conferences get kind of annoying for some coaches?
Yeah,
because I'm not on James Franklin's Christmas card list, but I don't think Marcus Freeman is either. How about that? How about I say it like that?
I don't think James Franklin is on Marcus Freeman's list.
Probably not.
I'm positive of that. Okay. Academic tradition, Vanderbilt, Northwestern. Northwestern, definitely. I mean, don't you want to play in Chicago? I think that's a good opponent to play. But I feel the same way you guys do about Penn State. I think that's a great college football matchup. Not really excited about going to Penn State.
They have great tailgating. I should say they tailgate properly at Penn State.
But when Notre Dame played them in the dead of winter in November, there was nothing fun about that. Oregon, great trip. I've always said that my oldest brother has spent the last 45 years in Eugene. Tennessee's a great place. Awesome. Love to visit there. I agree, JB, with you about if you lose USC, go ahead and schedule UCLA because you want to recruit in California, especially Southern California. And to make sure that Notre Dame's tearing up recruiting wise in North Carolina. So schedule the Tar Heels on a regular basis like you did with Clemson so you can play there consistently and continue to established ties. Love going to Austin. The Notre Dame Michigan series, it's one of a kind in terms of animosity towards one another. I don't know that, I can't follow the rules of the question per se. I don't know that I want to play them 12 years in a row,
right.
But I'd like to see them play Michigan home and away periodically. Let's put it that way.
I did not see Vanderbilt on the bingo card.
I just said, no, it's just, that's an academic thing. Just trying to even the playing field a little bit. Northwestern makes the most sense.
Well, if Nashville gets on the schedule, hit me up because I know all the food spots.
Husk. Go to Husk. You're good, right?
Paul's Chop House, Husk.
There you go.
Actually, the
Leg Porker Barbecue. Let's go.
Let's do it, JB.
Jeff Ruby Steakhouse. Keep it rolling. All right.
we had a second question tied to this, and it was from the aforementioned Statman 72. Playing the USC series as season openers would make scheduling for Notre Dame more difficult because most schools much prefer to play out of conference opponents like Notre Dame in September rather than mid-October or late November. Marcus Freeman is on board with playing the Trojans at any point. Do you have any sense whether Bavacqua would accept such a change?
I would say I get the indication that the Notre Dame is very invested in keeping the rivalry and would be fluid with the calendar, especially if it was to renew the rivalry for 10 years and it was 5 home and 5 away. I think people have questioned what I meant by USC feeling it has leverage. Again, USC feels it has more leverage than ever before in the series because it has the 9-game Big Ten conference schedule, and then it's got some more regional teams that it feels like it can play pretty regularly if it needs to in California that are still FBS teams, whether that's Fresno or San Jose or whomever. Sac State is moving up to the FBS level. So anyway, because of that, USC people believe that they have very strong leverage. But I think that if USC was willing to sign up for a new 10-year deal and it was 5 home and 5 away, I don't think Notre Dame would get bogged down in when the game was actually played on the calendar.
I agree with JB, and I get the point about how it's Notre Dame has to schedule a lot of conference games in September, but you can worm Duke has been the 23rd, Louisville's been the 30th. You can put an ACC game in there. Clemson is a non-ACC game could easily come into play in November to replace USC, which allows USC to be a September game. You could do Clemson home and homes in November as much as you want. At this point, that's exactly what Notre Dame did. I know it was part of the ACC, but I don't think it would. I think they get around that tweak of the scheduling. I never thought of it. That's a great point by Statman, but I think they get around it. And I agree that Bavacqua, as long as you're not giving up stuff and you're having 5 out of 10 at home. My point last week was I didn't think it mattered if you had back-to-back
Right.
at USC as long as you get it back at the end.
Right. Right.
I think it's
you're
okay
right.
to go back-to-back, but it's got to even out.
And JB, I understood. In fact, I think I answered a question on our message board for Horseman Lounge about leverage. What you meant by leverage. I think Notre Dame would be a little bit more open-minded if the Big Ten's playing, considering they're playing 9 conference games.
Yeah, I think, again, I just can't reiterate enough. Like USC feels because of that 9-game schedule and the fact that Notre Dame has 5 ACC games guaranteed, and that's about it. Notre Dame just feels like they're going to want, or excuse me, USC just feels like they're going to want this rivalry structured to their specifications, as much as possible in negotiation to keep the rivalry going. There is the proposal out there for 1 more year in 26, and then but they could settle something and start a new proposal that begins with 26. But right now, there's a proposal to do 1 more in 26 and then to continue, or to just start a new proposal beginning with 26.
Our final question from ND Quebec. Would or will a 10-2 Notre Dame team make the playoff?
Yes, I will answer that with great brevity. I have to run, but I do believe very strongly a 10-2 Notre Dame team would make the playoff. I don't believe it would be hosting.
I can't be as succinct as he was with that 10. I don't know. What if they lose to
Illinois? Just kidding. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, it depends who those two would be against, and then it also depends on. That's not what ND Quebec wants to hear. I think in general, I think a Notre Dame a 10-2 team this year has a much better chance of making the playoffs than they wouldn't have made it last year. Because of
Northern Illinois. Yeah.
But if you lose to, let's say you lose to Miami on the road, what's the other one, Tim, that they could lose in order to make it at 10-2? At Arkansas?
Yeah, I suppose.
USC. Well, here's
USC
the other
would have
thing.
to go 11. USC would have to go 10-2.
Exactly. That's the other thing. If USC goes 10-2 and you lose to them, well, that's one thing. If Arkansas, let's say you lose to an 11-1 Miami and a 9-3 Arkansas or 8-4 Arkansas that wins all their games at home, it's just there are a lot of caveats. But I understand where ND Quebec is coming from, and I think in general, they have a pretty decent chance of making the playoffs at 10-2.
The only 2-loss team that didn't make the playoff last year was BYU. And Army obviously can't lose 2 games to make
Miami
playoffs,
was
so that doesn't count.
Was Miami 10-2 in the regular
Miami was
season?
10. Miami was, oh, they lose their bowl game.
They
Yeah,
lost their
Miami
bowl
was
game.
10. Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. So Miami and BYU.
But they lost twice in November. Is that what it was? So.
It does matter too. People are
It
human when they
does,
vote.
yeah.
It definitely does. I think Notre Dame will get in, and I don't think they would have gotten in last year. But it's funny because my first thought is, ooh, that's tough. Then you look and like, there's a lot of teams in the playoffs now.
Yeah.
It's just there's
going to be more.
Yeah, there's
There'll
going
be
to be
more.
more. I mean, people were arguing for. Remember, Ole Miss was being argued for. There was a lot of teams that were trying to be pushed in the playoff last year. So I think Notre Dame, this schedule, unless things go absolutely crazy, will make it, and I would be shocked if that's not the case. That's it for this edition of Irish Illustrated Insider. We'll be back on Thursday because we get to preview Irish Invasion. The Irish Illustrated recruiting team will be there. We'll have Pete Sampson and John Bryce on that particular podcast. Until then, for Tim Priester, I'm Tim O'Malley of Irish Illustrated. Thanks for watching and listening. Irish Illustrated Insider.